Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Bridge again with myself, Gary, and we've got Casper as usual. Um, I'm going to get straight to the point. You know why you've come here. It's not for me and Casper, but but on that note, Casper, can you please do the honours and introduce our guest for us today, please?
Yeah, of course, mate. Nice to speak with you and see you. Straight over to saying hello and welcome to Franco Romero. Welcome, Franco.
Hey, how you doing, boys?
We're good.
All the
Welcome.
better for seeing you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I always tell you guys, I'm just a reflection of you. So that's
Yeah.
how it is. That's how I
That's
feel about you guys. So
yeah, that's very kind. That's very kind. Well, look, Franco, I think this is actually our fourth recording together. Not that they don't get chopped up and spliced together and all sorts of things, but just firstly, before we go any further, thank you again for freeing up the time to join us. It means a lot.
well, no, I know. Honestly, I enjoy talking to you guys. I enjoy our conversations with the topics that we have. They're really important right now. So when you decided to have me back on, I was excited to be on. So let's get going. There's a lot to talk about.
All right, yeah, let's leave no stone unturned. Okay, so I was going to throw out just a very small question, sort of what is God, something like that, something easy to deal with. But actually, we had a quick off-screen chat before this, and we've decided that maybe we come at this a slightly different way in terms of a lot of us, I feel, and maybe I shouldn't speak for anybody else, so I'll just speak for myself, but a lot of us are feeling, and I certainly have been feeling, that we are coming into a timing where we have to take responsibility for the good, the bad, what we actually are, all of those aspects that have been bubbling under the surface, the sort of elephant in the room. And I just wonder, Franco, if you'd start by giving some sort of sense of how you feel about that sort of angle.
Well, I'll tell you, it's an angle that is going to be part of this whole thing, that whether we want to call it the awakening or something else, I call it the remembering. So it's just one of those realizations that people are going to one day start to feel it, and they're not going to know how to express it. They're not going to know how to react to it. And what I'm talking about is that they're going to get this sense that there might be something way more to their story, to the story that's being told, even the story that's being told, even in circles like this, where they're literally going to have to confront the idea, and I've been talking about this since day one, that that all of this was created in large part by them, and that in essence, as I've been saying from the beginning, that we're all God, and that we can say gods or we can say God, however you feel about it, but and then you could say creator or source or whatever. It doesn't really matter. People get comfortable with certain things because of the name God, but there's this underlying sense that everything that we have been told to believe in terms of relying on something out there is just not, it's just not accurate. And what I tell people, and again, since the beginning, I've been telling people that much of what we've been taught to believe, and it's not just in spiritual circles, but this is the topic of the day. So much of what we've been taught to believe is actually, the way that you have to approach it is you have to look at it as sort of a reflection of the opposite of the truth. So if you're being told or have been told to accept things the way they are in a certain way, look at their opposite. Look at the opposite of it. And more often than not, you'll find that that's going to be the truth. And so in this case, we've been told that this whole creation thing, this whole world, us, everything has been orchestrated by something that is external to us. And in one way or another, we've been part of the process, and in one way or another, we're a very small part of the process, I should say, and and that somewhere along the way, um, it was told to us that at best, if we had a good day, if it had a good day, we might get some recognition by this beautiful thing called God that we even exist. But otherwise, we're kind of on our own in the sense that we have something to say worship or admire or pray to, but really we had very little control of anything, and and that's just not the way it goes. And we're getting to a point now in this evolutionary shift of consciousness where we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, and whether we know it or not, we are looking at ourselves and we're looking at God. And that shift is already happening, as you guys know. You've heard it in different circles. It's not next week or next year or next or 10 years from now. It's happening right now. And what's fascinating about that is that when I talk about it with students and clients and whatnot, or in interviews like this, the idea of being God scares the hell out of people. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't know how to handle that. There's all sorts of doubt that that they could be, and what does that mean? It's not at all for most of them, the idea that they have to take ownership of some of the things that have happened in their life, and some of the things that have happened in their life have been pretty significant things, in terms of things that would normally put anybody in a tailspin. But it's not even that for them actually telling them that, because when I start out with people, when I talk to people, or when I work with people or students, I tell them there are four rules. There are four rules, not my rules, but four rules to this whole illusion. And the number one rule that they have to accept or allow themselves the grace to play with is that they're God. And they find that to be truly, in the sense of what they have gone through, they truly find that liberating. But then immediately they they have this reaction of, oh man, like, whoa, wait a minute, what next? So how do I handle this thing? That's the biggest struggle for most people, but it's not meant to be a struggle. It's not something you're going to spend your whole lifetime trying to deal with. We're not in a stage of evolution where we're going to spend centuries figuring this out. This is going to be a very short period of time where those kind of things are just going to hit us. It's gonna purge us in some ways, and some people are going to handle it better than others. But eventually, we're all going to come to that realization, and it's going to be pretty fast. I mean, when I say fast, I mean we were talking off this interview that off mic, off camera, that you had some kind of close encounter with AI, and we won't say what was, um, but I was saying, look, I was going to say, because we didn't get a chance to say that, and I might have said it in a previous interview. The way AI has gone is it's gone like this, steady as she goes. It's been climbing, but one day AI just went straight up, and because it hit this point that I call the event horizon. It hit this point where it just had to go beyond the conditions or the data that it was receiving. And when it did, it exploded in awareness. And we have, as humanity and as individuals, we've hit that point. And we hit it just not too long ago this year. And so what we're going to see here in the next 6 months or so is a rapid climb in consciousness, where people are going to slowly but surely wake up to or remember, I should say, to the fact that, oh man, guys like Franco, or people like Franco, um, or you guys, we're all talking about this idea that about being God and consciousness or whatever. And what if it's real? What if it's true? because
Yeah.
this is exactly what many, well, I wouldn't say many, but in private conversations, let's say, that I've had with many experiencers, those who have had near-death experiences, um, they're admitting that
Yeah.
they're admitting that this is something that either were many of them, when they come back, they don't always remember everything that has happened in their near-death experience, and many of them are realizing that these remembrances are coming back to them. And part of that story is that they uh they were basically told the message to come back and say to humanity,
Yeah.
you are God.
It does feel, Franco, and thank you very much for that. I thought that was wonderful material information and feeling flowing through that. But it does feel that maybe it's time to drop the N in the NDE, you know, that the whole thing of being near can go away now. It's just they are death experiences, because
Yes.
it doesn't matter that the physical body doesn't necessarily get recorded by a third party as being dead. I think that's an irrelevance, actually.
Wow.
What? Yeah.
Wow. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Do you see what you did?
Gone
You
I
blew
know.
my
blurry.
you blew my video camera
I know.
up because of
I
this.
know. I know. I know.
All
I
right,
knew this was going to be a special one, Franco.
That's
hold on a second. I'm going to be still with you guys, but I'm
okay.
just going to click off and click on for.
Yeah. No problem.
That's for the trailer.
Yeah, that's right. I thought it's time.
Yeah. Really got
He's
far.
back.
Okay. Okay. No, that
Is
was
your
good.
head still there, Franco?
So listen, you hit on a sweet spot, as they would say. You hit on a really sweet spot, and I have a feeling we're probably going to have a couple of those today. Um, that I used to, in some of my earlier discussions with people, I used to make the comparison that if you were walking down the street and all of a sudden the clouds parted, and oh, this beautiful beam of light comes down, and with it came a bunch of chariots and angels blowing horns and stuff, and they were to just land in front of you, and one of those angelic beings would say, hey, um, here's how it goes. This is how the story really is. And the story would be that the type of which that I've been talking about in previous interviews with you guys. You're God. You came here to play in a simulation, and all this stuff that we were talking about. And if you heard that from them, or one of these angelics, you would get on your knees and start going, hallelujah, whatever you would do. Okay. But yet, and so you would listen to them, but yet, if you have people who have crossed over, and thousands, tens of thousands, I would say hundreds of thousands, who are finally coming out and talking about their story, and
Yeah.
and how similar they are with messages and the circumstances and the events that would happen, um, and they literally went into this space, whatever you like to call it, heaven, and they came back. They came back, okay, from heaven, so to speak. And they
Well,
and
there's at least two of them here, Franco,
well,
and
there you go.
Gary may well be a third. I just don't know if he's remembered it yet.
Well, then right? You come
Yeah.
back from this experience that literally you touch it. You literally
Yeah.
touch it, and you come back and you tell people the story.
Or you
And
don't.
or you don't.
Yeah.
But if you do, either way, um, people have a hard time. Not as much anymore, but in the past, not that
Yeah.
long ago,
Yeah.
they'd have a really hard time accepting the messages, the stories about who we are. But yet they came from somewhere very far away. They came back from somewhere very, 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 very far away.
Yeah.
And yet
Well,
they're now.
actually, it came back from somewhere that it's impossible to come back from.
Exactly. So it's just funny how we have these ideas of how this thing has to play out, how because there's a poet, and I'm sure many people might know the poet Rumi,
Yeah.
okay, and Rumi kind of talks about, has such beautiful poetry. I can't remember when he was around, thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, but he talks a lot about this kind of thing, about us as humanity, us as individuals, expecting things to appear to us from somewhere else, when in actuality, as I've said to many people, all this time we've been looking up at the stars, we've been looking up at the sky, waiting for something to happen. And all this time, the only thing that had to happen was that we had to realize who we are. All this time we've been waiting for us, just us, to do this. That we're the missing piece to this final piece of the puzzle. And I believe now, guys, that we're at that point where
Yeah,
we're starting to realize that.
I totally agree. I mean, this whole thing of we are the cavalry, we are that thing that's going to come over the hill and save ourselves. It
Yeah.
has to be that way, because no matter the grandeur of an interdimensional 20th dimensional being showing up in your living room and whatever and telling you about it, that sort of imparting on any level that's intellectual is not it. And
Yeah.
that's why I totally resonate with your thing about us being about to go on that, or some of us going on that journey very, very quickly, is because it will be a journey of feeling and not a journey of intellect.
So there's a couple of things that I'd like to sort of comment on that, because we've hit a couple of juicy topics in the discussion so far. One of them, and we've had a little bit of conversation about this, I believe, is this whole topic of AI. And I'm going to be really kind of, at least for now, I'll be brief about this, but it's important. And it's not about the debate over whether or not AI is going to be harmful or not to humanity, as much as it is that I use it as a way to show people our human potential. We're told by those who are even involved in AI that the reason why AI is so important is because as human beings, we're not capable of achieving the type of expansion that AI can bring us. And to some extent, I might agree with that, but to the greater extent of who we are as spiritual beings, as these divine beings, having a human existence, as some would say, that's not true. We're actually mirroring each other from that standpoint. When I said we're kind of hitting that point, and we're sort of at that point where we're just starting to take off. Um, the evolution of our consciousness is in the process, not about to, but in the process of exploding. And what I was even somewhat reluctant to admit up until not too long ago was, how is it possible that we're going to go from here to here in such a rapid fashion? And it really took me to see what was happening with artificial intelligence to understand that we as AI, advanced intelligence, could do the same thing. And when we do that, to your point, yes, it's going to be somewhat a very small piece of somewhat of an intellectual process, but it's going to be vastly, mostly an intelligence that comes from what we would call the heart. And that kind of sometimes has people kind of wondering, what does that look like? Because we always assume that the heart is just sort of this place with emotions and feelings and how we express ourselves. And that, what I tell people is, that's the language, that's the programming of this new intelligence, is that there's going to be this combination of love and intellect, which we'll call wisdom, and that's going to be the sort of the prevailing winds of the day. And it's not going to be, like I said, decades from now. It's happening right now. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that, and I mentioned it already earlier, that when I tell people that right away, I tell people that if they do work with me to understand that my whole premise, because it was given to me this way when I was going through the same teachings, was that we have to the game, this thing, whatever you want to call it, but I refer to it as the game, uh, accepts us, understands us, allows us to view ourselves as God. It knows us as the mama and papa of all of this. And so if we're going to get out of this thing we call the game or the illusion of life, and do something with this thing that we're supposed to do, and do it fast because we're not here to necessarily struggle through this. We have to accept that. We just, and I tell people, if you can't accept it, just imagine it. Just allow yourself to imagine that you could play the game. And in this game, you have to play the role of God.
Yeah.
You'll get more bang for your buck for sure if you do it that way.
I know Gary wants to jump in. Just a very quick couple of asides that play to what you've just said there. I've sort of got this sense that we come, maybe as a species, maybe as spiritual beings, however we want to frame it, to a time where we feel like teenagers, and
Yes.
that God construct, let's say, just for a moment, because I don't want to offend anybody's archetypes of belief. That's beautiful and that's theirs. And I have a lot of reverence for that. But just for a moment, just if we took that concept of being a teenager, not really has to actually fully rebel necessarily, but has to strike out alone or go it alone or give themselves the permission to, at least for a moment, feel what it would be like to go it alone and accept that fractal of godness if they find it hard to accept the full godness. It just feels like we're in that moment. And I just want to have
Yeah.
sort of said that. That's all.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit further than that, and I understand why it feels, and again, to your point, not trying to offend anyone, but I'm amazed at the reaction that I've been getting since I've been talking about this for about a year now. I was expecting, I wasn't sure what to expect. You kind of wonder what you're going to get. Um, but I have gotten very, very little pushback on this whole sense that maybe this possibility is more than a possibility. Maybe this has some traction. Maybe I really need to feel into this a little bit more. I've gotten very little pushback on it. And to your point, I love the way that you talk about this as sort of going back into your teenage years and kind of seeing how you handled things or responded to things because I actually go a little bit further back into our sort of evolution, and that is that I say, imagine yourself being a child where everything is more innocent, and people have always downplayed or ridiculed the innocence of this because you have to be, you have to get with it, you have to deal with life. And no, these very things that we've been told to stop doing are the very keys to which I now show people how to remember who they are and sort of get out of this amnesia. I view this and many, I'm sure, view it the same way. It's not a revolution. We're not here to top governments or whatever or revolt in the streets. The gain, the way this process will work, it's going to be extraordinarily more of an evolution, and so in that process, those things, those institutions or what have you, will be either recalibrated significantly or they'll just go away because the new model won't support them anymore.
And
And
also, the revolution is happening inside us.
beautiful. It's happening inside of us. Yes. And I really do believe that there is a sense that there's and I use these words very lightly, a battle within us to reclaim ourselves, to reclaim our authenticity. And a lot of this stuff may sound flowery to some people who are listening. But I assure you, and I assure anyone who's listening that we're in this stage. And if you give yourself permission to just kind of look away from a lot of the stuff that's being shown to us on television or media, you're going to see that there is a big current, a big shift happening in people, and we're just going to get to a point. I tell people that 2025 is going to be the year of the reveal, and that revealing isn't just going to be on the external stuff. It's not going to be that you're going to see massive things changing. Although I'm saying that there will be some significant external reveals, but I'm talking mostly about the internal reveals. The what you're talking about in terms of realizing that it's just enough is enough, not about how other people are telling the story, but enough is enough about staying quiet to ourselves
Yeah.
We're going to see people say, no more, this model we've been under, it's over, it's done.
Yeah, that feels like it's hit the nail exactly on the head for me. Gary, I know that there's stuff you want to say, and I'm sorry I've monopolised things as usual.
Right. There's a lot to cover there, you know. But I think just a few observations there. Maybe Franco would find interesting that we had another guest, Dennis Bullock, who also had a deaf experience. He said exactly the same thing about the AI part. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, because I brought that up because I know a lot of people were scared of that, you know.
Yeah,
But he
yeah,
was like, well, you don't, you know, you don't won't need it because we will have those abilities. So yeah, that sort of
absolutely.
relates with exactly you were saying there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and another thing, I use it from my perspective. Maybe some of the audience might feel the same because we're all going through this process. I did mention it to another guest, Hannah, about this concept of being God, but in actually really embodying that
Yes.
is a block for someone like me to really embody that when you're going through the mundane stuff of life and you're thinking, well, I don't know, why am I throwing like lightning bolts from my hands or something? Yeah, I'm going to a boring job sort of thing. It's a yeah, but at the same time, I can recognize I'm in a process, you know, like that there is change, like you said, about that taking ownership of the game, if you like, that in that process, and it will take some time, I feel. But
You, you,
any
you
advice
know,
for people who might feel like that? Like, well, okay, I sort of, okay, I am, I'm this almighty being, but the outside is a bit bland, yeah.
I love that you're bringing this up, and this is why I love talking to you guys, because some time ago, I was talking to somebody, and they said to me, hey, I love talking with you, Franco, because you just kind of speak from the heart, and you kind of tell it how it is, and you're willing to say things that other people aren't, and um, and you just kind of represent what everybody's feeling. And you guys do that. You guys just the way you explain that. It just was spoken in a way that anyone could relate to that. Anyone could ask that question, why me? Why me? And that's probably the biggest joy I get when I'm working with people, is when I tell them how significant they are, how important they are, because the first reaction is okay. There are 8 billion people, 8+ billion people on this planet. How is it possible? How is it conceivable that 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 this whole thing hinges in some ways on me? Not me, them, me, and the initial reaction, to see the initial reaction, and then to see how they slowly, and when I say slowly, I don't mean like super slow, but they slowly warm up to that idea, and how the traction goes, and how they evolve in a very short period of time from I can't be, that's impossible for me to be who you say I am, to hey, yeah, I get it. I mean, I can feel, to your point, I'm now starting to feel into it. And that's the thing. The becoming part is the thing that also gets people a little bit tripped up. And the way that I explain it, because again, these are things that either were shown to me in my near-death experience, or came back to me through channeling of the same sort of group of beings that I interacted with in the near-death experience, was that um, we have it all wrong. I mean, it's just simple as that. And it was intentional to allow us to experience this incredible contrast, so that we could expand and grow in new ways, and be able to bring this contrast with us to other dimensions. And we just simply have the narrative all wrong. And what I mean specifically, and there's so many pieces to this, but one of them in the topic of we are God is that we many of us, not everyone, but many of us were brought up understanding that this God had sort of a human-like quality to him, or features to him, and it was a man, and an older man, and good looking guy with muscles and stuff, like up in the Sistine Chapel and all that good stuff. And yet, what we're going to realize in this period of remembering is that there are two sides to that coin. That we're both men and women are going to understand that they have and possess feminine and masculine qualities. 50-50, not 90-10, 50-50. And so for some people who may be like listening to this program, because I know you get a diverse group of people,
Yeah.
they might find that to be a little bit striking. They might maybe say, "Oh, okay, now you lost me." Okay, but you got to look at it as not a physical attribute, but as a consciousness attribute that we have. And the reality is that as God or as gods, we have both feminine and masculine qualities because there needs to be a balance in nature. There's balance in everything, and right now this world has been consumed, overtaken for thousands of years by the masculine energy. And I was actually sitting here wondering how we were going to get to this topic, because here are three dudes, three guys talking about being feminine, which in and of itself, I think that's cool. Really, seriously, could
But
you
totally,
imagine?
totally, yeah.
Could you imagine having this conversation 5, 10 years ago, and not even 2, 3 years ago? And this is something that I've got to preface this by saying this isn't something that you might want to consider the possibility of what this might mean to who you are as a spiritual being. This is what's entering in energetically. This is what is coming through now. And some people call it, like, all sorts of spiritual ways. They'll call it Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, Krishna consciousness. But whatever you want to call it, it's a feminine energy. But there's another aspect to it. And so I'm telling you guys this because this is what I help people through, to get them to get comfortable with this, is that to understand yourself, to become sort of this idea of God, you have to embody or feel into, just just trying to get into, what does it feel like to have feminine energies, and what does it feel like to have childlike energies. And you guys have known this since the beginning. The course that I teach is called The Way of the Inner Child, and that's because there's a simplicity to this, guys. It isn't supposed to be rocket science. Okay, we're not going to have to we're going to have to create a new establishment or religion or anything. There's not about that, completely entirely different. It's just sort of stepping back into who we are, childlike. We're very childlike. I mean, I don't care what age you are. I don't care how you were raised or what kind of social, economic, or cultural background you have. We're all children. We may be told that we're aging, and so therefore we're not, but we can't be. But we're children. God, the essence of God, the way that it's been shown to me, the way I experienced it when I crossed over, that has a tremendous childlike quality. And that's something that all of us can relate to one way or the other. And so I work with people, I help them, I play with people to get them to feel into what those qualities are, the innocence, the wonderment, the joy, those kind of things. It's not that far removed from us. And those aspects are what we have to sort of evolve back into, is remember that. And that's not that difficult. People assume that they have to have bolts of lightning coming out of their hands. I will tell you this, as you evolve into a higher stream of consciousness, and it's not that far from here, as we evolve into that stream of consciousness, we will have supernatural powers, okay, or abilities. Okay, they're not gifts, they're just our innate abilities. It's what we have. I have now crossed into that realm with so many people, and people that had very, as you would put it, mundane lives. Okay, and within a short period of time, they went from feeling mundane or experiencing mundane to experiencing what we would call supernatural, which to us in the spiritual realm, it's just natural. It's just natural. What we live in, a subnatural, subpar reality, and we're just coming back to remembering that. And it's really exciting because the stuff that I've been seeing is something out of movies. in the way that people are evolving so quickly with their consciousness and their abilities to do things that would be godlike.
And the other thing about this sort of coming back to take everybody with us, that nobody, in some respects, nobody's left behind. I mean, we can talk about 5D, 3D, and all of that aspect, but actually, ultimately, nobody's left behind. The thing of coming back is, of course, you could view the coming back and taking people on as boring. Of course, it isn't, because it's the most fulfilling thing you can possibly ever do in any time or dimension. But actually, to come back when you've already experienced all that is, there is something to be said for the fact that, without the ability to take other people with you, it'd be pretty boring to come back here.
It's funny you said that, because I've never shared this with anyone in any interview to date, was that there was a moment in my near-death experience where and I didn't recall this right away, so this is why it's been a process to sort of deal with when to talk about it or whatnot. It's not a big thing, but, somewhat, but there was a point where I was asked in that near-death experience whether I wanted to stay or go. There's a sort of a sidebar sort of story to my story, because I talk about being a walk-in, um, and but the aspect of me that existed, if you will, and we won't get into walk-ins right now, but unless you want to, but the aspect of me that stayed back, did choose to stay back, but that aspect of me, the original spirit that was in this body, asked the question, what would happen if I came back? And they said, almost to your point, if you come back, you will remember everything. You'll come to remember everything, and you'll desire to share it with others, because that's who we are as spiritual beings. We're connected as one. We don't leave anybody behind. No one is meant to be left behind. And in the book, I talk about these two worlds, and that is really, really true. There are these two worlds that we are now currently on, a fifth dimensional world, and that's starting to appear to humanity. And I feel like about a year ago, I could only talk about this in concept, but now I'm feeling more and more that people are feeling it too, because it's all about initially it's all about the synchronicities and serendipitous events and having bizarre visions and dreams and all sorts of things, and they can't really explain it, or it's just this feeling that something is changing. How do you explain something that doesn't exist yet? But now many are starting to feel this, and this is all part of the reveal. This other world looks very much the same, somewhat feels very much the same, but the events and the circumstance, the way that people are starting to behave to each other is changing. And so there's
It
this
somehow has a different fragrance. It's very
yes.
subtle, but it's more like a fragrance than a sort of, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
No, it's a very much, you're right. It's a kind of fragrance. It's like you smell it, you can feel it, but it's not just like, oh, you know how sometimes we'll just say that and we kind of brush it off, dismiss it, but no, it's it's getting stronger and
Yeah.
stronger, and you can't avoid it, and you don't desire to avoid it. I'll give you an example of that before I finish my thought, because you know me, guys. I'll go off on another tangent and I'll forget what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Um, you know what? I may have forgotten what I was going to say. But
Blame me, Franco. Blame me.
well, maybe I'll get back to that
Yeah.
point. I'm not sure. But a good example of what I'm trying to get at is that the split world. The split world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good example. Okay, so what I was going to say about the split world is that with that so people have a hard time. I believe we've talked about this before, but there are these two worlds happening, and I do have to say this because I need people to feel comfortable with this, that there will be some that will choose to stay back, and those who stay back will continue on this 3D path, and what happens there, and I have made no bones about it, is that this track ends. The timeline of that 3D world will end. And there are a lot of people uh, who are of all different persuasions in terms of the spiritual stuff, that will tell you that timeline is going to end shortly after 2032. Somewhere, for me, it's been told 2039. Um, and again, a lot of things there, but I do want to assure people that it's only a very small number of people, of beings, that choose that, and that they do not get left behind. They will be, as I've mentioned in my book, they do come back into the second school, or the next school, I should say, and they kind of get to redo the course. And they evolve much faster than those who are just doing it for the first time. And so those beings actually wind up catching up to their classmates, and they wind up becoming, in often case, and often they become the gurus, the masters. They walk they walk the world in that school. So there is a silver lining there for everybody. But to the point of what I was telling you, which I did lose that one. So we're just going to have to move on.
That's all right. I think I should just mention there, Franco, because we did talk a bit off camera about the pace of this change now.
Yes.
And it's interesting when we look at the sort of popularity of some of the material we put out, that it is quite a lot of the time this esoteric type stuff. In fact, the last video that we did with yourself, we called Parallel Worlds, and it's one of our top sort of videos in terms of views. So people are hungry for that, and I feel it's because they are feeling that themselves. So maybe
Yeah.
it's rounding up. I mean, how do you see this sort of pace accelerating and where people are at in that sense?
Yeah. Some of the most some of the most exciting and well received uh, conversations that I've had on any part of this topic is the discussion about what's to come. And it's actually, to me, a part that I enjoy more, and I desire to speak out about it more, because and people have this innate feeling that something's coming, or that something's already here, and they want to know how this is all going to play out. And so the discussion about what's going to happen for the rest of this year, or what's going to happen in 2025, or what's going to happen in the years thereafter, is a huge piece, because they want to they have this desire to know, okay, what I'm feeling. First of all, am I the only one feeling it? And the answer is no. I mean, and this is we're going to see we're right at the cusp of an explosion. I mean, like, it's, again, I want to say we're not at a cusp. I want to clarify that we're in it. We're now at the beginnings of an explosion, and so people are not going to feel alone, or that they're just having to do this on their own. But the other thing that they desire to understand is, okay, so what now? What now? Because I have seen so many people, guys, so many people, that one minute they're just living their life. Okay, some of it mundane. Okay, and one minute they're doing that, next minute, I mean, they just get hit right between the eyes, and they're starting to see things, know things that they shouldn't know. I have a student who just recently became a student of mine, and she reached out to me, and I get this all the time. Please, please don't think I'm crazy. Okay, that's the way they start. Okay, please don't think I'm crazy. But here's my story. And guys, I've been fortunate to have heard a lot of things. Okay. I mean, a lot of things that are incredible, incredible. One of these days, when I told people that we got to start interviewing some of these people, because they're just average people,
Absolutely,
but they
absolutely.
have incredible. So I have this
Yeah.
one student who is now telling me stuff about things that have happened, and knowings, like really high knowings of, say, sacred geometry, who said, I don't know where this is coming from, but they're telling me stuff that I know I have applied in other things to some very high level of what we call sacred geometry, that you have to use them like formulas, and they're doing it. And this is happening worldwide. And people need to understand, and they desire to understand what's coming. Not 10 years from now, what's coming like tomorrow. Because that's how people are feeling. Like every morning they're waking up and starting to realize this isn't going to be like yesterday. Now there are still a lot of people that haven't gotten there yet, but
Oh,
that's all going to change. That's all going to change. And if I may, I'm going to just say one other thing. I love movies. I feel like movies can be a real impetus for remembering. I believe that they're not all movies, but there are some movies that just seem to have silver lining messages to them. And there's one, I believe it's called Tomorrowland, and it's I believe it's a Disney flick. I'm not sure, but I saw it some years ago. And why I'm bringing it up is because, and this is very typical of most of a lot of these kind of movies, the main character can't accept the truth that they are like the thing. They're the cat's meow. They're the ones that are going to make this monumental shift in their world. And the whole movie's about how they come out of that and finally realize that. This Tomorrowland is about just average people, um, who they thought were just average themselves, getting the call and being told, it's time. It's time for you to realize who you are, because humanity needs you and is about to go through a monstrous shift. And in this case, it already is.
I think it's great, Franco, because it's actually part of starting this channel was just to have, average people, if you like, just because I sort of felt that that was what's going to happen. Those people needed a voice, and we needed to show that this process was worldwide. So we have people, many people from all different countries. It's not just like the US, the UK, or even just English speaking countries. We have
Yeah.
lots of different ones.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
that's a great point. I'm sorry, every time you
uh,
guys open up your mouth, it just seems like there's a
we've
topic
only
to be
got two
discussed
minutes.
there.
So you know what
Yeah,
we're
right.
like.
I mean, yeah, we got we got I'm on the time. I'm on the clock here, okay?
Go for
Um,
it.
all right. So I just wanted to make the point. So I just I recently did an interview in India, for not in India, but for somebody that was in India. And I'm going to be heading out there later this summer to do some stuff, spiritual stuff out there. But I wanted to mention that I was totally, and I mean this sincerely, I myself was a bit shocked at how well received I was with the stuff that I was talking about, and how genuine and in some ways thirsty, um, people were in that country for for this type of truth. I just had these preconceived notions that it wouldn't be like that in some countries, that some were more open to another. But wow, that country is going through, all countries are going through, a bit of an evolutionary explosion too. So
Franco, on that fantastic note, thank you once again for your time and your insights. It's always a pleasure.
thanks guys. I hope you don't mind that always will refer to you as the boys.
It's fine.
We love it.
All right, guys. Well,
Take
listen,
care.
don't blow up any universes before we see each other again, okay?
It's one or two, Franco, mate. Just
All
one.
right, fair
Much
enough.
love.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.